Welcome everyone to another Offsite webinar. We're joined by Jake, of course, from the Offsite team, and then the special guest, Jessica Zwan,
Svan.
uh, Zwan. Sorry
Close,
about
very
that. I should
close.
know. Friends
Totally
for a while.
fine.
I should know this by now. And then Emily Smith, a much easier name to pronounce, uh, and got a great webinar today on all things increasing employee engagement, retention, and alignment via offsites. And so I would love to give our panel the opportunity to introduce themselves real quick, and then we'll just jump right into it, make this all value, no fluff. And so, yeah, Emily, if you want to go first and introduce yourself, that'd be awesome.
Perfect.
We'll
Yeah.
give you the
Hi.
spotlight here.
Perfect. You
Boom.
might also see my dog Jasper pop in the screen. So another special guest. He's very excited that I'm up and out of bed this early in San Francisco. So
Ah,
um, great to meet everyone. My name's Emily Smith. I was previously at Lattice, the HR technology company, for 6.5 years, where I did everything from customer experience to sales enablement to being the chief of staff and running our customer community. And now I am actually going to be starting a new role next week at a company called ViewMedi, where they do medical education software. And I'm going to be their first biz ops hire. And I think the main reason they hired me is my experience in annual planning and making effective offsites and onsites with executives to make things happen. So I'm very excited to talk about this topic with you all today.
Thanks for joining
awesome.
us. Jessica, I'll give you the spotlight now.
Yeah, hey, my name is Jessie, or Jessica, but I go by Jessie most of the time. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of a company called Talentful. We are about 300 people, fully remote, headquartered in the UK, but we have people and offices in New York, Berlin, Canada, San Francisco, and Austin. We are technically fully remote, and my previous company was called Whereby. We are famously distributed since birth. We were distributed before COVID, and we had people in like 15 countries all around the world. A big part of our engagement strategy was through what we called on-sites, because of course everyone was always off-site. And yeah, I'm excited to chat a little bit about the experience I've had running these kinds of things in all different types of companies with my team.
Last but not least, we have Jake.
Hey everyone, my name's Jake. I'm the head of sales here at Offsite. Prior to this role, though, I was chief of staff of a nuclear fusion startup where we were working on a really cool nuclear energy problem. Prior to that, I was working in luxury hospitality. And then prior to that, I actually started my career as an educator where I taught ages 2 to 102 in the music situation stuff. And so I would always joke with my nuclear engineers, hey, explain it to me like I have a degree in tuba, because that's what I had. So made for a really effective way to get people all speaking the same language. And the through line of my career is how to get really smart people in a room, solve really hard problems, and then once we leave that room, execute on those solutions that we decided on. And so that's exactly what we do here at Offsite and help our clients do the same. So that's why I'm here chatting with you today.
Woo. I'm Jared as well, for those of you who don't know, founder of Offsite. I was an early employee of 15.5, which is like Lattice's biggest enemy, competitor. And it was there that I got to attend offsites as an employee. And then I spoke at a lot of offsites in my speaker, author, consultant era, and then ran summits for entrepreneurs where I was planning offsites essentially for 4 years. And then, now we've helped hundreds of companies plan team retreats all over the world at Offsite. And so it's been a really fun business to run. Love hosting these sessions and sharing whatever value and learnings we can. And yeah, I guess I want to start with a trend that I saw going into the pandemic, and one of the big trends that led me to start Offsite, which is that all the pioneering remote first companies planned team retreats from Automatic to GitLab, Zapier, Buffer, 15.5, probably Lattice, et cetera. And so why? Like, why are offsites the thing that increase employee engagement, retention, alignment better than most other technologies or strategies for remote and hybrid teams? And maybe Jesse, we'll start with you, and we could pop it around wherever we want.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you rightfully say that like companies have been doing this for a really long time. I think about my time at Box. One of the things that we did at Box is every single new employee went and had a full like 2 weeks on site at Box HQ in San Francisco, which was essentially an offsite, right? You've got all your new starters from all different parts of the business all together. And then we regularly ran sessions where people would be flown to have like team offsites every quarter or every year, whatever it was. So it's been part of, I think, a lot of company strategies for a really long time. Why do I think it's effective is a difficult question. I think part of it is just like the immersion, right? It's like there's something non-immersive about a technological experience that has definitely value. Like there's like a very easy distribution channel for technological experiences for people globally. It's something that is, I think, much more trackable, much more measurable, something that can kind of fit in with like diverse lifestyles. There's a lot of positives about technological experiences, but there are negatives about it. And the same is true for kind of meeting with your team on site. It's very, very difficult to get work done when you're on site. Sometimes it's actually very difficult to, find the data and information you need while you're kind of brainstorming together. Like if you're doing a workshop where everyone's got post-its on the wall, very frequently part of those conversations, particularly back in the day, would be like, okay, cool. So when we get back to our desks, somebody has to take this and like go and run with it and find the information in HubSpot or ask these other people. That doesn't exist in a technological kind of offsite or a workshop or a retro. You're really able to be like, okay, cool. While we continue working on this, can someone just quickly like go and plug into HubSpot and figure out what the answers are and come back? It's much more kind of real-time feedback. So pros and cons, but I think the immersion part is a really big part of it. You really are kind of getting to know and see the much more ephemeral parts of your company culture and the much more ephemeral parts of how you work together as a team, that ultimately I think really forge great relationships, right? You might not do the best work output from that session necessarily. The work kind of comes later. But yeah, I think that is like a really big positive that you kind of can't ignore.
Thoughts, Emily, Jake?
Yeah, I think that there's going into the pandemic, there was a rise in like productivity of the workplace. Some of that was probably like people not being disrupted and all of those cons of being in the office. Part of it was people couldn't do anything else. You literally could work or sit and watch TV. And so you found people working a lot more hours. And so I think it created this really sort of false reality that like work could be much more productive and should be much more productive if you just work and you cut the other things out. And the byproduct of that was a loss of relationship, a loss of trust, I think a loss of like culture. And, we talk a lot about this notion of third space that is already disappearing. You then had home and work, no third space. Work was becoming a lot of young people's third space. I know my first job in San Francisco, most of my friends from the city, I met at that job because we were in person 5 days a week. After work, I didn't know anyone in the city. We would go to the bar and have a beer. Like that was a way to build community. And I think at the cost of building a great bottom line, which may or may not have been for other reasons, and also the roller coaster that was the world economy at the time, people decided that meeting in person like wasn't that relevant. And then they started to see people not trusting, people not feeling like the company was theirs, people not feeling as bought in, people feeling less engaged, and culture's just dropping. And so on-sites really became this important tool to make people realize it's not just you sitting at your computer 12 hours a day. This is a way to build relationships, meet the people that you're working with, build trust, forge those bonds, and recognize that you're all working towards one common goal. I very much have always wanted to work at companies where I believe in the mission and what we're building, and being in person with other people. That's the way to show my passion for that. And that's the way for them to understand when I'm pushing them as a project manager, as a chief of staff to get things done, it's because I believe in the mission, not because I'm this pushy name on a Slack screen that just doesn't understand what else is going on. And so I think on-sites in the pandemic became such an effective tool to build stronger teams and get people bought back in on the reasons we're at work in the first place. But anyway, that's just sort of my random thoughts.
Yeah, I
always
agree.
got something.
Agree entirely. Not to relate it all back to music here, right? But the best bands always went to band camp. That's why there was the best jokes about band camp forever as well. The reason why things like retreats and experiences and stuff is because you're creating a common memory and a common goal. You're able to unite around a common purpose. And most importantly, though, you're able to build a deeper relationship, right? eating a meal together and not discussing work, but discussing work over a meal creates a different bond than just slacking someone. Playing cards together and just laughing, having joy together, experiencing that passion together, like Emily mentioned, is what makes great companies great. And so that's why we do offsites, in my opinion. Short and sweet on that one.
I don't think there's a lot of skeptics here as to like why to do offsites, but despite everything that you three just shared, despite my own thoughts on why to plan offsites and why they're so valuable, I do think it's much harder to actually quantify the value of offsites. Uh, and Jake, maybe you could share kind of how we've started doing that with clients, but it really after that, then be curious to hear from Jesse and Emily. How are you measuring employee engagement, retention, alignment, ultimately like the ROI of offsites? Because everyone here is going to need to then, take all the reasons why we should have an offsite and then go convince their finance teams to do it, and their CEOs if they're not as bought in. And so, Jake, what are we doing with clients right now, and what have you also seen like some of our clients doing even outside of our own efforts to help them? And then Jesse, Emily, how have you helped to actually track things like employee engagement before, during, and after offsites from your experience?
Absolutely. So the first question I ask anybody when I hop on a call with them is, what are your goals of this offsite? Right. We just talked about very intangible things like playing cards together or sharing a meal together, right? But having very tangible results of, we want to be aligned on our Q2 OKRs. Okay, that's one version of a goal. We want to increase connectivity between employees. Okay, that's one goal. We want to make sure the project outline of the new software update that we're doing has a very clear through line between product and engineering to sales, and everyone's on the same page. That's a good thing. But number one is you have to know exactly what your team wants to walk away from accomplishing and experiencing before you even begin discussing with finance whether or not there's money for an offsite, right? Back in the kind of the Web3 crypto heyday, that answer would be a lot of, oh, well, we want to go drive Lamborghinis through the Rocky Mountains, right? Okay, that's a goal. I don't love it, but that's a goal, right? Now it's much more tangible of, we want the experience to be XYZ, or we want to solve these three problems that we're facing, right? Once you have the kind of the three main goals that you want to walk away experiencing and accomplishing, then what we do is we put that into an anonymous survey. And we always send our clients two surveys, one anonymous where it's more employee wellness data. Like, do you have feel like you have a close friend at work? Do you feel like you have a community at work? Not a family, community, keyword there. And do you feel like you can disagree with someone on an issue? And like any kind of those things, right? And that's anonymous that we send pre and post offsite. And then the non-anonymous one that we do is asking employees, what do they want to make sure that they figure out when they're here? Is there a problem that we need to solve? Because that helps our clients bring a lot of things bubble up to the surface about what everyone on the ground is feeling. So that's important to ask. And then in that survey, you can also ask things like accessibility needs and things like that. And then what we do is we take the pre-offsite data from the anonymous survey and the post-offsite survey and put it together and see what we thought. And usually there's a very clear ROI of pre-offsite. We're at 4s and 5s, and post offsite we're at 9s and 10s. But unless you have those very clear goals of what you're measuring, you're not going to be successful in measuring it. So that's my answer. I'm going to pass it over to Jessica.
Hey, yeah, okay, so I think there are lots of things in this world that's very hard to measure ROI on. Essentially, offsites are a branding exercise, in my opinion. Like, if you speak to someone in marketing and ask them to accurately measure a brand campaign on something, it's going to be not like, I think you're getting probably the same quality of answer as what we are all giving now. So I think it's important to remember, like, that doesn't give us an excuse to be like, well, brand marketing can't measure the outcomes of their billboard. That's obviously rubbish, but I think you can definitely learn from parts of the business that definitely have much more kind of ephemeral metrics around them. I personally hate surveys, and I don't love sending out surveys at all, really. Actually, if my team comes to me and says that the best way to measure something is a survey, I'm almost like, go away and come back with 3 other options and tell me why they are the best way to do it. I think offsites are a tool in a tool belt of trying to solve a bigger problem that you may have, of which you may have multiple things that it's one part of the solution, right? So you just gave the example there, Jake, of maybe it's we want to get alignment about our OKRs for the upcoming year. Fine. Okay, well, there's a part of that alignment that maybe the offsite solves that problem on, but there's actually a bunch of other things that need to happen in order to get alignment on OKRs. Like offsite's not going to solve the problem. You're going to have accurate financials going into the year. You're going to have, you know, some kind of workshop or discussion from an executive team around what your strategy is going to be, or like what the top line goals are you're going to try to achieve. Some of these things can actually be very successfully solved synchronously online and asynchronously online. But then you agree like, oh, but there's this one big chunky part where we need to have everyone together in a room, no distractions, where there's an element of kind of fun, frivolity, play, serendipity that needs to exist. It's really hard to solve that problem synchronously or asynchronously on the internet. So how much money would we pay to solve that problem? Well, frankly, I'd pay to solve that problem the best of our possible ability, to get to a place where all of us are very satisfied with the outcome. I would pay $20,000 to solve that problem, because it's going to cost us, if we fail, $2 million potentially of like lost revenue. Great. Well, in that case, I'm willing to invest $20,000 on making sure that we solve that problem to like a 90-degree level of satisfaction. And then what I would literally do is at the end of the day, be like, we've got an extra 2 hours at the end of this offsite. Do we feel we've got to the threshold of like 90% satisfaction of how we've solved this issue? And that's obviously really helpful for small offsites. If we're doing all company offsites, I think I kind of default back to the idea like it is a branding exercise first and foremost. What you're trying to do there is really get people to kind of be really engaged with your company brand. And I think the best way to measure that actually is probably, very frustratingly, a lagging metric, which is like how engaged are people in terms of their attrition and their like lifetime value and contribution to what you need them to do. I think the halo effect, and maybe this is a controversial opinion, like there's very, very successful and talented people on this call, but I think the halo effect of offsites, really people are super jazzed about them for like a week or two, and then they go back into life. I think it's the kind of repetitive promise and deliver on a really great brand experience and all the different facets you have as an employer that ultimately engage people. If you're going to set it and forget it in offsite once a year and you've got a great survey outcome, I think you're going to be very sorely disappointed when in 6 months' time, people completely forget that ever happened. That's my opinion.
I think to like talk about the success of offsites, so the number one thing that everyone brought up is like, what's the goal? I think they aren't the end all be all. I can agree with that, but humans are social creatures and they need that in-person connection. So you're never going to be able to like fully measure that. I am the opposite of Jessica. I believe in the power of surveys. But I also worked at an employee engagement survey company for 6.5 years. So I've seen
fair enough.
The power that they can drive, and actually, if you're doing them at the right cadence, is what you can learn from them. But everyone is, has their different opinions and measures things differently, and there's no right or wrong answer there. But I do think like when it comes to getting buy-in on offsites, I have like a very clear path that I have taken that has proven to be successful. And it's like so simple. It's the crawl, walk, run approach of like, if you're asking for $300,000 for an all company on-site the first time or off-site, whatever. I use the term, either or, because if you're a remote company, it's usually an on-site. If you're an in-person company, it's an off-site, but it, it means the same thing, getting together in person. That's probably going to be like, well, what's the measure? What's the outcome? But if you can have smaller, proven in-person interactions, you're going to build your way up there and be able to make it there, and also learn along the way what makes sense. So when I was at Lattice, I was chief of staff deep in COVID. Our executive team was all new. They had not met each other in person yet. And we were doing annual planning. And I knew, I was like, we had a big executive team at the time. It was 19 people. We were like trying to figure out the right levels and stuff. But at that time it was 19 people. And I was like, there's no way one day is going to be enough for everyone to sit there, share their goals, get aligned, ask what they need of every other team. But we've never done an on-site before. Everyone's already grumbling about having to give up a day. And so even though I know we need 2 days, I'm only going to ask for one. And I'm going to make it really effective and really useful. And I'm going to follow my golden rule of meetings, which is you have to do the pre-read ahead of time so people are actually sharing their opinions and they're not just reacting in the moment. And I'm going to make it so at the end of that day, everyone's asking for more time. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. At the end of that, everyone said, next year we need 2, maybe 3 days. Like, this was so great. This was so useful. I need to do something like this with my team, with my leadership team, because I feel so aligned. I feel like I've learned so much. It's so great to meet people in person for the first time. So it's like a very intangible goal of like, I just want people to want to do this more, and I'm going to make this effective and useful. So then in turn, they will do that with their teams. Next year, I'll get more time. The next year we did it again. I got more time. People had done it with their teams. Then there was appetite to do some version of a company kickoff, which we did like sort of on site, sort of off site. And it was just this, like, I had this vision 3 or 4 years out in the future. The whole company would get together. It would take us that long to build it into the financial plan anyway. We were over 500 people. That's like not a small cost, but knowing that we wanted to get there and that the way to do it was to show people the value of in-person time, how to make good use of it, and then have them start doing it on smaller scales, that it was almost like the answer to that branding question Jessica brought up of like, why is it important? People came out feeling good, feeling excited, feeling like it was a good use of time, and wanting to figure out how we could scale that larger. And so I think while there's not like a clear, hey, like this thing is the reason or this financial goal, knowing that humans are social creatures, knowing that I wanted people in place together to build that trust, and knowing that I was going to start small was the keys to now. I think this year, for the first time, Lattice is doing like an all in-person company kickoff in one place. And for everyone's context, that small one-day exec onsite was in 2019. So it was like we really played a long game there, but really started to build in the budgets over time, doing department level, executive level, all sorts of things to get us to a place where all company felt exciting, important, and a good use of time.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
5 years is a long time. For many companies, 5 years is like an unimaginable amount of time to plan for the future. What can you do if you are pretty confident that the engagement problem you have could be ostensibly, at least in part, solved through like running offsites, and you don't have 5 years?
I don't think you need to start at the all company level. That's the first thing, is like when we started the executive level, then we were able to really quickly build in like, okay, finance, you can do it all finance, go to market, you do all go to market. I think the all company thing is that's the thing you need to work up to, because it's really hard. I say the same thing about like goal setting or everything. There is rarely something besides like, there are some things, but there's rarely something that applies to everyone at the company. They need to understand all company goals, but like even at that level, like a support person coming in every day answering support cases, their day-to-day goals may not align with like the business transformation that is company goals. So I think if you're finding that in-person engagement is what you're craving and you want to build team and community and you want it to be a good use of time, then go at the level in which people's day-to-day work makes sense. That may be within marketing, or that may be cross-functional, like everyone who's working on launching this product, from marketing, sales, product, engineering, those like areas or focuses of work. I think that is where it makes the most sense to get the highest bang for your buck, the biggest return, the most engagement with the company. It's great to do something all company, but I think like the reason it takes so long to build up there and to find the value there is because you really have to know, why are you using all 500, 600, 20, 50, however many employees time that you have, what's going to make the most use for it. I think you can get those same gains and excitement about the company on a smaller scale at department or like cross-functional on-sites.
And
I tend to agree. Sorry, I'm like going off piece. It's like we're a small group. Sorry, is that allowed? Am I allowed to do this?
go crazy. Yeah.
Do whatever you want.
I tend to agree. I think there's like something in, there's 2 things that are coming to mind. As someone that runs the finance team, the cost of 10 all team offsites is the same as 1 all company offsite, right? So that's like the cost difference to me doesn't really add up. That said, I do agree with you on the idea of like something like this, some kind of like focus element, like your team community you're building. We did something at Whereby, which was actually suggested by the team that I was running at the time that organized the offsites, which I really liked, which I think is like a practical tip to think about. We did an all company offsite with everyone in the entire team once a year. And what we did we did a second team offsite. So your team would meet up. The one requirement is that you had to partner with another team that wasn't necessarily close to you at all. So product and engineering weren't allowed to go together. We would say like CSM and design, partner with another team as a head, and then you two as groups had to run your offsite together. Now you could do breakout sessions together. You could do whatever you were doing during the day separately. Like you could do like one team's working on the design sprints, another team's working on like sales training. That doesn't bother me. But what I need you to be doing is spending time together as a group, in a smaller group, doing your dinners and your socials and your like team offsite, like running, whatever you're doing in the morning and stuff. And that was in a way, because I really think the thing that you lose from team offsites is the thing that we're kind of bringing up here, which is the fidelity around spontaneous connections in your company that build community beyond just the people you work with day to day. And that's the thing that I think if you're going to build a strategy that's centered around team offsites because you don't have necessarily the budget, or finance doesn't want everyone off for a week because it's going to delay revenue, whatever it is. Like I understand all those things. That could be an alternative that could help you get there.
Totally.
The part that I always tell our clients is, number one piece of advice I give people if they're thinking about what are they doing in their offsite, is ask yourself the question, what are the things that we cannot accomplish over Zoom? Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, when they're doing an all hands or something like that, you'll see them just doing death by PowerPoint. Everyone is sitting, listening to a PowerPoint presentation all day, every day. And
listening.
Listening. Yeah, exactly. Air quotes. And so it's sort of the question of, again, as you're thinking, could we accomplish this over Zoom? Yes or no, right? Emily mentioned the pre-work, right? There's that stuff that you can accomplish over Zoom. Running the financial reports, that stuff you could do over Zoom. The point of getting together is to make connections or make decisions. There's no other in between, right? And so, or to solve problems that, for like a great example of this is that there was one event we were doing. We created this a version of a start, stop, continue exercise that I call Shark Tank, where cross-functionally random teams of 14 people get together, and then we have them do a start, stop, continue, and then pitch it in a Shark Tank style thing, right? Or a presentation to the leadership team. And out of this idea, I was walking past this group that I was helping facilitate, and I heard the sales team say, "Oh, well, if engineering could just build this one button, then we would be great." And the engineer in the room is like, "There is that button. Here it is." And the salesperson's like, "What?" And like that's the point of an offsite, is to create those moments of connection and problem solving that can't happen over Zoom. So that's the number one thing I always tell people when you're thinking through what is our agenda. But if you're doing an all hands, how does that look as well? Because it's very different than a team meeting.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of focus in on specific things we can do before, during, after offsites in order to increase employee engagement, retention, alignment. So, hopefully by now, like, we all generally know why we should do offsites. There's lots of reasons. We've started thinking about ways to track success or think about how to get ROI. So then what specifically, what sessions can we run? What levers can we pull? Exercises can we go through before, during, after an offsite in order to increase employee engagement? Emily, maybe we could start with your experience and things you were doing, and then share. But want everyone to walk away with as many like insights per minute as possible. Yeah.
Totally. I think it's important, like going back to the beginning of what Jake said, of like having those very clear goals and then making them known to everyone coming in. So if you're doing like an all company thing, like when we did our first like big Lattice kickoff last year, that was all company at the same time, not co-located, but like it was like half hybrid, whatever. We came in and we were like, "Hey everyone, like we're changing the way we talk about our product. So we're doing a pitch off because we want everyone to know the new messaging." And that is why. It's not just, it was to create those moments like Jake talked about, where I spent hours pairing people across different departments. I wanted them to meet new people, but there was also a very clear reason of like, there's new messaging. We want you to know it. This is why we're doing it. We also want you to meet new people. That's why you can't pick your own team. And so making those exercises and moments very clear, whether you're going to do a fun game, whether you're going to do a PowerPoint. We also wanted everyone to know the goals of the company. So we're like, we're going to spend time asking about, sorry, my dog is in here. He wants to talk about his goals too, which is to get a walk right after this. But it was also talking about our company goals, and we wanted people to deeply understand them. So we were very clear with everyone of not only are we going to do this PowerPoint about the goal and what's a part of it, but we're going to stop after each one and allow you all to ask questions, because we want you to deeply understand and know that the rest of our year, the cadence will be set up around these goals. We do bi-weekly all hands, which is a lot for a company of that size, but every week we talked about a different company goal and our progress on it. And so the offsite was really the anchor to the rest of the year, how we talked about our business, what the new things were that we were launching and why. And then we could always refer back to like, you learned this at this offsite. So, you know, probably to many people's fears that Jessica brought up is, could it be a set it and forget it sort of thing? We're constantly referring back to the moment where those things were introduced to the company. And then next year, it'll become that cadence. So people know, oh, at Lattice kickoff, I'm going to learn the goals or new messaging or our big new product or whatever it is. And then we're going to spend the year enabling people off of that. So if you can build that clear goal, the clear cadence, and refer people back to the why, then it becomes a really important part of your company operating cadence and not just an exercise to bring people together, which is also very important, but hard to justify if that's the only reason.
I think my biggest like feeling about this is like, offsites are really, I'm going to say something that's kind of, again, we're a small group. I'm going to say controversial stuff probably at this point. It's like my morning time. I'm ready for it. Offsites are organizationally like a massive pain in the ass. Like, let's just put that out there. Like, they are really, really, sorry. They're really difficult to run. They take like a huge amount of organizational calories. So I think you really want to make your cadence around offsites be something that is both like people are really motivated and excited by what this means and what it is. So there's like a huge amount of, I think there's like a lot of pre-planning in terms of like, what is the pre-read, what are the stuff we can do, what's it trying to achieve? Absolutely. Like, I think that's really important. But I think you also can't really fall out of the, like, you can't forget that what you need to be building as well is like a huge amount of hype from your company. Like, people really want to look, they need to like look forward to this. And I think this is actually something that does get missed. So I'm going to like talk about something that I think is like the thing that I failed to learn maybe the first couple of times I ran an offsite was like, you can put all of the effort in the world into making sure that your workshops and everything else is going to be great when people are on the ground. But actually people need to be coming jazzed. And that is a piece of work that I think is like really difficult to remember. And I think to create the jazzed experience, I think you actually need to like make the experience of getting into the offsite really fun, like that ramp in. Like, and I mean like operational, I'm a COO, so this is where it's going to come from. Like, is it easy for people to book their flights? Is it going to be on a really annoying day where people don't have childcare? Like, are people coming into this being like they're at JFK, like, oh God, here we go. Like, I have to go to like some rural part of Arizona for 5 days with people I barely know. If people are coming into it with that headspace, like you've got so much work to do on the ground. So I think that's like a really important, like very, like focus on that as well. Don't let that go. Some like little things that I think my team has done, which are really beautiful to make that happen, is we do a commercial kickoff every year. We get all of our commercial team, all of our revenue team together. It's in March. It's not a great time or place for a lot of people. They're kind of like, you know, it's end of Q1. We've got a really big roadmap ahead of us. We did our last one in upstate New York and it was snowing, which everyone was like miserable about, but like people were jazzed to be there, right? We'd like really hyped up, like, it's going to be this beautiful location in the countryside in New York. People were like ready to go. And one of the things that my team did, which I thought was really beautiful, was they sent every single parent or person that had kind of caring responsibilities, they sent their partner or their mother or whoever was looking after their children like a care package ahead of time to say, we totally acknowledge that this is actually going to be a huge pain for you and your family. And we want to like try to ease the load a little bit because this loved one of yours is going to be away for 5 days and you're going to be alone with the kids. And actually like little things like that, making the booking experience easy for them. We got like a virtual EA to do all of the bookings. We didn't make people do their own necessarily, just really took the pressure off. So when people came in, they felt like, oh, I can kind of relax and really experience this. So I guess that's the thing that I think people probably don't think that much about that is really helpful to make them successful.
I love that hot take. It's my favorite one. In
My
the
favorite one.
definitely it's like, but also like taking it one step further of like pet sitters as well, right? Things like that is sort of the awareness of the personhood of your employees is so important when planning these offsites, right? So things down to making sure that you mentioned really good tips for like getting people ramped up and excited for it. Even when you land from JFK to rural Arizona, where I'm from, right? It's
Sorry about the rural Arizona. I
Oh
didn't
no, I
want to
love
call
Arizona. It's
anywhere.
great. I thought it was funny that you said that, right? But it's the small details of like, what is the playlist when you're on the bus? Right.
Yeah.
What feeling are they feeling when they're getting off the plane? Is there a welcome? Is there a person welcoming you? I remember when Jared and I think it was like my third offsite here. We actually I flew from Arizona into Syracuse because we did something upstate. And Jared was there with a sign saying, "Welcome, Jake," and it was just like a small little detail of making sure that your team members feel excited to be there when they land. And then I think the easiest way to lose excitement though and lose the ramp is when it's a waste of their time. Right. The like the phrase of like this meeting could have been an email, when it's an offsite that could have been a Zoom call, it's you're also losing that, right? So definitely agree with the pre-work and making sure that you are using that, but then thinking through as part of the pre-work, do we need to have this offsite, and genuinely asking yourself, is that something that's important? And usually the answer should be yes, right? But just having that check-in as you're planning is really great. So for both Jessica and Emily, I'm curious for both of you. Emily, you planned the first all hands, I'm assuming, right? What were your big learnings from that first time? And Jessica, I would love to learn what has been your biggest learning from your offsite planning process so far. And we'll start
Emily,
with,
go ahead.
yeah, we'll start with Emily and then go to Jessica.
Yeah, I think the biggest learnings that I had is going back to what I said, it's really hard for something to feel super applicable for everyone. So when we did the pitch off, and I explicitly said at our company pitch off, salespeople aren't allowed to give the pitch when we do it because that's what they do and we want people to learn a new skill. And we had like engineers up in arms, like, why would I have to do it? And so being very clear to people around the what, the why, that is so important because something could be so obvious to you about why you're having the whole company do it. You're so deep, you're so thick in the planning, you're so excited about these fun games and things. And honestly, the winner of our pitch off ended up being a team where an engineer pitched and everyone was like so hyped on him. And he's like, oh my God, I learned a new skill. And it was like so great. But like we had to spell that out for people like, hey, like we want you to get out of your comfort zone. We want to make sure everyone really knows the messaging. Sales already had a separate training about this messaging. So we're worried everyone else won't learn it. Like this is the messaging that you should use as an employee when you go out in the world to talk about what Lattice does, what is your employer. And so I think that was my biggest learning is like, I'm so deep in the like, I'm excited. This is going to be fun. This is like so great that like, even when you plan for the hype, plan to make it easy, it's a very thankless job. There's always going to be someone who has a problem with something. And so
Oh yeah.
able to like come with the excitement, meet them where they are, say, I understand that this may not feel this way. Let's talk about it. Let me help you understand. Let me understand your worries, your fears, and just like really explain to people the what, the why, and what they hope to get out of it. And then when they say they're not sure, or could we get this other thing, being able to work with people because it is a lot of people's time. So I think just, I always plan for that, but I would add 50% more of that time than I expected. Because even if having done internal comms in my career and owning that org as well, you have to say things 10 times before everyone listens. And with an all company exercise, I would probably say you need to say it 20 times.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I think my kind of takeaway is like, don't fall into the trap of doing the things that a company is good at. Do the things that, so, okay, let me explain this. A lot of you, and rightfully so, and we're having this webinar is with Offsite, we'll be working with an external partner. Almost certainly you'll have someone else helping you kind of plan this event. Whether that be you're working with like a resort or some kind of location, there's like an events planner there, or you're working directly with someone that helps you make offsites happen like Offsite. Do not become the person that wants to do the things that companies are good at. And what I mean by companies are good at, I mean logistics, booking things, making schedules, like do the thing that nobody else can do, right? The things that Offsite cannot do and the things that a resort cannot do and a hotel cannot do facilitate like what is the content of these sessions? What do we really want people to take away from here? Like, they can help you, they can give you ideas, they can guide you, but they do not know what are the things that are missing from your culture, or what are the things that are strengths, or where are the places that a person's skill could be incredibly well used to come in and like do a great keynote. Like, that's your job. It is inherently harder, I think, actually, like, especially like I'm thinking from ops, right? Me and my ops team are like so good at building a spreadsheet with 500 people and all the details on, and like how to figure out like the best airport to fly out of. But that is not the thing that I should be having my team focus on. My team should be focusing on the stuff that Offsite cannot do for us. That is a really painful learning, because I think what you end up losing, the fidelity you end up losing there, is you end up basically, you pay for someone to do all of the logistics. You end up kind of like micromanaging the logistics, and then all of the beautiful qualitative stuff that you have in your team just completely gets lost, right? You lose a lot of that. And I think I have run some of the most organized offsites in the world that were probably pretty transactional because of that realization. So I think you need to kind of get out of your operational comfort zone if that's the space that you work in, and really like take that to bat. And then I think the other thing as well is like being very upfront with the things that are going to fail. Like, every time I run an offsite, whether that be like six EMT members, and like you've got my operations manager running it, or whether it's like literally all 300 of us meeting up, I will literally like speak to my leadership team and say, like, these are the things that will happen. Someone will miss the bus. Someone will not get on the plane. Someone will go to the wrong hotel and try to check in. Like, these are all things that inevitably will happen. Someone will forget their keynote. Someone won't bring their laptop. Someone's going to like arrive and get really drunk, and we're going to have to deal with it. Like, these are things that I'm almost guaranteeing you are going to be things that happen. None of these things are disasters. We have kind of vague plans for all of them. Everyone has an expense card. We're going to figure it out. But if someone in your team doesn't get on the bus, like, it's not the end of the world. We know these things are going to happen, and that's going to be okay. Because I think that the amount of money going into this as well, like, all of these like micro problems, I think kind of people feel like, oh, the offsite was a fail because 3 of our sales team didn't get on the bus, or, this person slept in until 10 a.m. and missed all the sessions because they were super drunk the night before. Like, that doesn't make the offsite a failure. That makes an offsite a success, because those are the things I predicted. What would make the offsite a failure is things that you do not predict, that are like wild, kind of out left of field. So those are my 2 big learnings.
Yeah. I always tell clients kind of 2 things. Number 1, expect the unexpected. And number 2 is definitely, your employees are adults. It's cruise ship rules. If you are not on the cruise ship by the time the cruise ship leaves, that is your responsibility. And it is not the company's responsibility to get you on the right bus, because we did everything in our power to make sure you were set up for success. You are an adult. It's your problem, right? Those are 2 really kind of cool rules. But that's enough of me talking, enough of Jared talking. I want to hear questions from the audience. What do you want to know? We have 2 of the smartest people when it comes to offsites here, and then there's me and Jared. So feel free to ask away, and make sure that you take good use of this time.
Hi, I'm Jakob from XYZ Reality. I'd like to ask a question. One of the most impactful offsites that I ever ran, it was a focus on the human aspect. So we know we had loads of work stuff, goal alignment, planning, fixing stuff. But basically this thing where we said, everybody has 8 minutes in the leadership team. You spend 8 minutes, chunk your life into quarters, and tell us how you are who you are today. Like, the company I work for is a construction technology company. Lots of people from construction industry, big, burly, manly, sort of overly, macho environment. And by the end of the hour, like, everybody in the room had welled up at least 3 or 4 times, because people just became really vulnerable, really opened up, whether it's prior drug problems or losing parents at a young age. Like, people just talked about stuff that had nothing to do with work. And I found it just the most incredible leveler, and everybody just opened up, and it set a beautiful tone for the work that we then had to carry out. Just wanted to know if there are any other exercises that have worked particularly well on that kind of human aspect at all that we could all tap into.
I love this. Hey, Yak.
Hey, how you doing, Jess?
Nice to see you, pal. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that I love that. We did something very similar at Lattice for our first onsite, which was called If You Really Knew Me. And that was, we had 20 people. So we broke people into 3 groups, and basically we paired you off and said, our CEO went first and did the example, because it was getting very vulnerable very quickly. And we were basically like, he'd say, like, if you really knew me, you might know that I used to love this, like, I don't want to give his personal examples because I was like, I'll do it for myself. Like, if you really knew me, you know I was an identical twin and she's my best friend, but we're super competitive. So we've chosen to live our lives very separate because we don't want to compete. If you really knew me, I grew up figure skating, but it was really hard because there's all these sorts of like blah, 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 whatever, like all this stuff. And you would go in and you would share that with your small group. And the person next to you was your partner, and it was their goal to learn as much as they could. So then we came back to the large group, and then the person next to them would share 3 facts they learned about you during your 3 minutes. So then Jessica might say, hey, I'm Jessica. I really learned a lot about Emily. If you really knew her, here are 3 things you would know. And it did 2 things very similar to your exercise, where it allowed people to get very vulnerable very quickly. I think having our CEO go first and give the example really set that tone because he got very vulnerable very fast. But then it also was like, it really got you to like partner with someone and learn them really well, because you were responsible for then sharing back to the group about this other person's very vulnerable stuff. So you didn't want to get it wrong. So I think it really built that strong connection really quickly on 2 different levels of like learning about everyone, making them all feel human, but also like allowing you to feel responsible for someone else and sharing their story is just a different sort of ownership and responsibility that I think helped our team, who had never met in person before, really build strong bonds.
One thing I would say to add to that is, if you are going to have some sort of session where people are being vulnerable about their past or things like that, give them permission to go as shallow or as deep as they want. I do agree that the CEO should lead, or the founder should lead and be very vulnerable to give the example, but whether it's in pre-work, sort of letting people know in advance that something like this will be taking place, versus surprising them. Like, some people may not be as open to sharing as vulnerably, and like, we've done it at our offsites, and like it was a net positive for sure, but a couple people walked away like not quite ready to share, their feelings about their dad who left them when they were, early in their life, or something traumatic like that. And so I would just give them like the permission not to fully engage with that, or to go as shallow as they want. And then the other thing I would throw in, which is somewhat related, and kind of going back to the employer branding element of this, is, with Offsite, we do 2 all hands meetings per year, and we're a small enough team to do that. One of the 2, we permit everyone to bring their significant others, or some like very meaningful +1. And I think when we did that, like the before and after was very significant in that we could relate to our colleagues in a much different way, because we met their spouse who's now pregnant, and like we're very excited for them, or we met, their boyfriend and now they're engaged, and we're like really happy for them. And so it just humanizes your colleagues. It brings more of their whole self to work. And you can create programming for, the +1s to do fun stuff during the day, or kind of like make it known that they need to be in control of their, day events, and then they'll join for meals and things like that, or fun activities. But I think that was one thing that, we'll do again once a year, and then once a year we'll have just the team meeting, that really like humanized everyone in the eyes of each other. And it was really touching. Like that's the kind of company a lot of people want to work for. So yeah.
Nice. I have 2 things to say here. I've got like one activity for you, Yak. I think it's like a kind of fun thing we did. Is like, I think it's called the thread game. Basically what it is like, there's a series of prompts you have in the middle of a group. And the prompts are things like, what is something you're grateful for, but you're also struggling with? Or what strength do you see in me that you think I might doubt in myself, right? So like kind of deep questions. And there's a few of them in the middle, and you kind of sit in a group. Someone goes and picks up one of the cards, and then they can either pull the thread. So they specifically look at a specific person and say like, Jakob, I want to pull the thread. Like, tell me about myself here, or tell about yourself. The questions can be both introspective and about someone else. Or you can say, I just want to let it flow. Like, I just want to let everyone in the group just say like their answer to this question to whomever they're interested in doing. And then you can kind of pull the thread from someone else. So like, I ask you the question, you then say, I'd like to pull the thread to Emily, and then Emily answers. So it kind of like has this kind of chain effect where you start this kind of more organic conversation until it starts like winding down, and then someone else picks up a new card and you start again. I really love that game. I think it's really interesting because it doesn't require any pre-work from anyone. I think sometimes what you end up with is like, especially when you're doing like tell the life story, I think that's a great story, and I love that, is like you inevitably have one person that comes in like, oh shit, I didn't realize that. That's how deep we're going. Like they're kind of like madly redoing their life story in the pre-work. So that's helpful. The other thing I think is really interesting is like, I don't know who here in this room is like interacting with Claude or ChatGPT on a daily basis, but I am obsessed with Claude. I literally do everything through it. I talk to Claude more than I probably talk to like my husband and my best friend at this point. But it's a really interesting thing to be like, hey, we're doing this like exec offsite. These are the kind of personality profiles of them. These are the things I think we're really struggling with. We want some kind of activity. And don't just take the first thing it sends you. Like go back and forth for a bit and play like, oh, okay, I really like this kind of path we're taking. Or like, no, I don't think that would work for us. And build something bespoke because it can be incredible at making these like super niche ways of kind of getting people to connect. And I think that is a good path.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome on.
Do we have like one more question? Because I wanted to wrap up giving you a few minutes before any like, 11:30 a.m. Eastern meetings. But if there's one burning question left, feel free to ask it in the chat or unmute yourself, ask away.
I think we got the cards from a game called We Aren't Really Strangers or something. We're not really strangers card game. And like we didn't use all the game cards because some of them are a little like spicy for work, but we went through and picked the ones that we liked the most. Like it's now become one of my favorite questions to ask people is like, what is something you're grateful for that you're also struggling with? Is such a great like deep dive. Like people will be like, I've got so many friends around the world and I struggle to like meet up with them. And it means that I feel like I'm losing relationships. Or someone will say like, I'm so grateful for the fact that I went through, so much in my divorce, but actually I'm still struggling with what it feels like to be alone at work. Like this is like, it's like some of the questions in there are really good. The School of Life also has some amazing work card games, which is a UK company that you would know about. Yeah, I think we had heaps of them at Wonderly when we were there.
Well, check that out. Thank you.
Love that.
Any burning questions before we wrap? Cool.
Awesome.
Well, I am grateful for the time we've had with Jesse and Jake and Emily, and I'm struggling with the fact that it's coming to a close. So if you guys want to give a little plug or how people can stay in touch with you, that'd be awesome. And then I can also circulate that to people that are going to watch the recording or review this online. So Emily, tell us more about how we can stay in touch with you as you start your new journey as well at VuMedi.
Well, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Emily Smith. You have to put in either Lattice or VuMedi because there's a million Emily Smiths in the world, but always happy to chat about this or annual planning, or I'm really big into like company goal setting and how to make that effective. I have a lot of hot takes and have given a lot of talks about that. So if anyone is struggling with that, I'm always happy to chat one-on-one about that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm much easier to find because my name is very specific, but you can also just look my name up on my website if you're interested in it. I wrote a book. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn or look at my website if you're interested.
Hell yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Jake?
Jake at offsite.com. Keep it easy. And LinkedIn, but it's there's a lot of Jake Whites out there in the world too. So
And I'm Jared at offsite.com. Go to offsite.com, make a free account. Let us know what you think. We actually just deployed some new features yesterday, new user dashboard, new vendor marketplace. So you can book your offsite venues, but also your speakers, facilitators, swag providers, activity providers, all that fun stuff. And thanks so much. And let me know what you think of these webinars. I think this is our third one. We've been getting some awesome people to join us. I would love to continue doing them, but I want to make sure they're valuable to you. So give us feedback. Let us know what you thought. And thank you so much for the time.
Bye.
Thank
ya.
you. Cheers.